It's recording. Perfect. Okay, so if you're here to learn about mindset and improvement. Okay, I am not going to preach and give you this guide that's going to be the perfect way to get you out of tilt, but this is a guide essentially for people that are having a really hard time with mindset. Okay, I'm basically using a lot of the knowledge that I've gained as a coach from experience, my own personal experience, from the teams that I've coached, and from the guidance I've gotten from FITGMR and a bunch of other things as well. Okay, this is what I've seen works for people. This is what I've seen works for players. Okay, this is perhaps the most I've seen in terms of getting you somewhere in terms of your rank. One thing that you guys need to understand is you need to know your enemy. And the second thing is when you're trying to climb, if you're having a hard time doing so, it's going to be a very, very slow process. Okay, because at the same time, not only are you trying to improve, but you're also trying to beat your peers who are potentially also improving. Okay, so this is a guide in case you're hitting a wall and in case you're hitting that wall because of tilt. Potentially, you might be able to use this as a way to also get yourself into the flow state, but that's a completely separate topic. If it does help you reach that, then perfect. Okay, but for now, let's talk about what we're going to be discussing. First few things, we're going to talk about tilt, understanding your enemy, like I mentioned, and then I'm just going to give 2 tips. The first one is going to be maining a game. I think that was pretty self-explanatory on what it really means. Then we're going to talk about getting into more of a winning mindset and winning more games in general. Okay. We'll talk about goals. We'll talk about a little checklist that you can use to get yourself ready because consistency is key. And lastly, a second tip you can use to essentially use your losses as a way to improve. So in case that you're losing like 3 games in a row, you can just skyrocket upwards. Okay. Maybe like a next day type thing. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before I start on the presentation? Perfect. Okay. So first things first, what is tilt? I think everybody is already familiar with tilt. Okay. It is a mental state of both frustration and anger that usually leads to a clouded judgment, or it leads to poor decision making. Maybe it leads into rushed decision making. A lot of things tend to happen when you're in this state. Okay. But the first thing that you need to do when addressing tilt is you need to find out what makes you tilt. Okay. I mean, a lot of you guys probably have your own separate things. I can give you guys some examples, like for example, a bad play, maybe bad aim, toxic teammates, unfair matchup. Sometimes it just doesn't seem like it's winnable, right? It is important to know, okay, that you could just have anything happen to you during the game and it could lead to tilt. And this is why I'm going to let you guys know right now, if you're not aware of what makes you tilt, if you don't know what your triggers are, I suggest you start looking into that. When you record your own gameplay, if you like to do so, you should find out where exactly it is that you tilt. When I'm doing VOD reviews with players, I always tell them, if you tilt in the VOD, it ends. The VOD ends because it doesn't really matter what you learn from that VOD. It just could have been easily prevented if you weren't tilting. Okay. It's that powerful, and it's just that much of a tool that you need to figure out to kind of address within yourself. And remember, when it comes to tilt, it doesn't have to be necessarily the game itself. It could be anything outside of it. You could have had a bad day in general, maybe a bad exam, maybe anything of the sort like that. You could have no food, no sleep. You maybe had a bad conversation with friends, maybe your peers, your family, and the sort, right? You need to find out what makes you tilt, because I'm realizing that players nowadays are harboring in a lot of feelings from the past when they're coming into the game. And I need you guys to be in a clear state before jumping into the game. Okay, so that's that. So with understanding tilt, let's talk about it a little bit more than what it is. And when you're understanding that it's a state, I need you guys to also understand that it's a heavy process that's happening in your brain. Okay, bad tilt will always lead to a bad mindset. Simple as that. Okay. I need you guys to think about tilt in a way that, you know, heavy RAM processes are running in your PC. Okay, your PC is going to function much slower. So think of your brain, giant PC, and then you have tilt, clogging it up, slowing it down. Okay, this is the complete opposite of the flow state. I need you guys to be able to understand that. So with that out of the way, when we're understanding tilt, I need you guys to understand that when you're playing the game, you have to use gaming as a small slice of your life. Okay, I like to think of gaming as a microcosm into how we play in our lives. So for example, if you're a leader in the game and you like to agile, I would say that either you have the mindset of a leader and you might not execute it as well, or you might just be a leader in general, right? It's some of those things that the qualities that you do in one game will come into the next. Okay, So when I do this, I'd like to tell players when they're playing all the time and they're playing the same game, I want you to think of it as if you're doing your job 24/7 with, playing it, and you're doing this whole thing and you're miserable and you're doing it with it like with the potential chance of a promotion. Okay. If you look at it in that type of like mindset, you'll understand that in this state, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not really changing anything. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're just getting more and more miserable. Okay. So when you're looking at that, okay, when you're looking at that, you need to start paying attention to ways that you can kind of take care of yourself while you're playing. Okay. So for example, when I was trying to climb, one of the things that helped me a ton was having multiple games to play. And this is when I tell players that they should have 2 to 3 different games in the rotation when you're playing. Like, for example, let's say we use the example of League of Legends, right? Playing League of Legends, I'm trying to climb in League of Legends, I'm having a really hard time. Well, I should have other games as well that I play. I usually tell players that they shouldn't match the same genre. So if you're playing Valorant, I don't suggest you play CSGO or CS2, right? You should be playing different games in the FPS genre so you don't lose that motor skills, but at the same time, you still continue to play something else that keeps your focus up. So when I was playing Valorant, I was still playing Apex in the background. I was playing Call of Duty in the background. I was playing Halo in the background, but I wasn't necessarily maining those games. It was something that I would jump into when I needed something to do when it wasn't the game. Because when it comes to playing these games, okay, you're gonna have a really hard time climbing. Okay, if you're only playing one game, you're going to get into a rut. You're gonna hit a wall, and you're just gonna lose RR. Okay, it's just gonna happen. There is no I'm just gonna play and break through that wall. This isn't an anime. Okay, it is your own mental state, and you're just making it worse. Some people do have, for example, streamers, they have like these amazing days where they win like 12 games in a row, but that's their job. And you can kind of see that if their entire life revolves around it, there's going to be some things that they have ahead of you. You have an entire life that you have to live besides the game, and you have to look at it that way. Okay. So for example, when I was doing this, besides playing those things, I would also recommend that you look into single player games if you really like gaming, or hobbies outside of it. So for example, well, I wasn't playing anything competitively. I was kind of catching up on some old titles that I never really got a chance to play when I was a kid. So Luigi's Mansion was one of them. The OG God of War series, like the trilogy, right? I played those. I was having a really fun time with those while I was climbing at the same time. And the reason I'm telling this to you guys is because I've realized that as I'm coaching all the students that I have over like 4+ years, notice that a lot of you have made winning games and being a good Valorant player like your entire personality. Okay? It is your entire personality. All you guys want to do is climb, and you guys want to make sure that you have Radiant to show your little name off. It's not going to do anything. It doesn't mean anything unless it is a streamer career and this is something that you're actually making money off of. It is not really doing anything for you. Maybe you can use your climbing experience as a way to kind of get somewhere. Maybe you can use it as a hobby. Maybe that content creation can be your hobby, and that can be the side project. After all, editing and coming up with creative ideas is its own thing, right? You can use that as a method of transforming your game, right? But by no means do you have to do this and just play the game senselessly. Like, there's no reason for it. Yep. So I suggest that a lot of you guys kind of come in with the idea of playing the game, having different games in your rotation, and making sure that you're not just playing this pointlessly. Okay. Now let's talk about winning games. Okay. Again, this is not the end-all solution. I'm not giving you like the magic pill for this, but this is what I've seen players do that does help them out. Okay. So first few things is when I see players coming in with tilt at the very beginning of their games, it is mainly because they're trying to catch up. They're either trying to catch up to their friends, to a streamer they like to watch, to somebody that they're competing against. Maybe they lost 3 games in a row last night and they need to win them this time, and they're trying to catch up there. Okay, this is a terrible idea. A lot of you guys are going to have really bad experiences if you're just trying to rush your gameplay because you're trying to get there ASAP. Do not rush. Do not catch up. Those things don't exist. Every single game session should be a clean slate. And because it is not, and it doesn't feel like that, you need to be aware of it. Mistakes cause more frustration because you're just trying to catch up. It's just not going to work that way. Okay. Now, I put SMART goals there because that's something we teach at FITGMR. By no means do you have to do that. SMART goals is just one way that we like to teach players to create small little things that they can do to win more games. So, for example, you need to create goals that are specific to the thing that you're doing, right? So, for example, if I'm Diamond 2, I want to get to Diamond 3. That's my goal, right? It has to be measurable. How do I measure that I achieved my goal? Is the goal even achievable? Can you even reach Diamond 3 from Diamond 2? Yes, it's pretty simple, right? And you just progress down this thing. I encourage people to look up SMART goals if they feel like they want to incorporate a little bit more structure into their life, including gaming. Because again, some people come in from work, from school, and they only have like 3 hours or less to play the game. I encourage you guys to look into goals. Okay. In order for you to establish a climbing goal, I encourage a lot of people as well, look into smaller goals and very small time frames. Okay. The more you separate these time frames, the better. So for example, I would say within the next 3 days, I'm going to look from getting from Plat 1 to Plat 2. It's a very small goal, and it is very small for me to get there because it creates this idea of, if I need to get to Plat 2, what do I need to do to play into Plat 2? Are there any characters that really, really engage with the Plat rank? So I would say, for example, being a controller is really easy. Okay. If you can master the controller role, then you can get a lot done when you're playing to get to Plat 1 to Plat 2. Or maybe you're like, my mechanics are really good, so maybe I'll just insta-lock Duelist for the next 3 days or so. And that's what I'll do, right? It's a matter of kind of identifying what works for you while at the same time keeping it in a small time frame. Okay. Break your goal into chunks if you need to. I encourage you, if your goal is to get from Ascendant to Immortal, maybe break it down, like I said, from Ascendant 1 to Ascendant 2 instead of just Ascendant to Immortal. That makes it a lot more daunting, and it leads to burnout. Okay? So, again, just try to look into that. This is where the checklist comes in. This is a checklist that I have for players that they need to maybe kind of look into, because what's happening is I find that players try to play the game, and the biggest thing that's stopping them is not having a routine. And they always ask me, why am I not consistent? Why am I always like good one day and bad the next? Because you yourself are not consistent with your body. Okay. You need to be consistent. You need to follow a routine, because at the end of the day, we are creatures of habit. Okay. You're going to stay consistent throughout in every stage of your life in order for you to be able to play the game consistently. And it sucks. A lot of you guys are probably going to be yawning and be like, okay, well, that really doesn't matter. I just want to play more games. But at the end of the day, you're just kind of doing another coin flip on yourself instead of just your teammates. Again, you can only rely on yourself when it comes to climbing, and this is the best one I have for you guys. So these are some of the tips I have for you guys in order for you guys to be able to reach potentially even that flow state if you do this consistently. So there's 4 different things that you need to do. Number 1, warm up. I put aim lamps right there. Everybody uses some sort of aim training software, or they're using something like the range, deathmatch, you name it. Warm up. When you're doing your warm up, kind of pay attention to how you're feeling. If you're hitting your shots, then you might actually be good. I'd rather people feel good about themselves, jump into a game and see what happens when they're playing that game. But sometimes when you're playing that warm up, you might not feel amazing. You might come in and you might whiff some shots. Maybe you're feeling a little bit tense. I need you to kind of pay attention to that. Your warm up can be something between 5 to 15 minutes. So you have an ample window of time to identify whether you're feeling good or not. If you're not feeling good, the next step is this. Okay, try to figure out why you're feeling off. By no means do you have to play that day. If it's maybe the only chance you'll get for that week, then what's just a couple losses, you name it. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to win and to climb and you have those 3 hours, okay, you need to start paying attention. Did you sleep well? Are you tired? Did you eat? Did you do any of that? Because I'm finding that players don't even drink water nowadays. I find that a little bizarre. They just like to drink everything, but kind of pay attention to that. Maybe you played something else. So for example, I was playing Destiny 2 and I jumped into Valorant again and I just felt horrible. And I'm like, what's going on? My senses are completely different. Okay. Pay attention to that. Are you playing something that is a completely different game? When I was playing Siege to Valorant, it uses ADS. I can't do that in Valorant as consistently. I should not be doing that. It's a more movement-based game with that, right? Pay attention to that stuff. Why are you feeling off? Ask questions, okay? Feels like it feels like a therapy session, but you need to identify what's going on. Okay. Otherwise, you're not going to be consistent. You're not going to do this. This is something that athletes do at every stage of play in order for them to improve. You need to identify those triggers, and you need to identify why you are feeling off. But let's say you kind of figure that one out. This is where the final tip essentially comes in. Okay. And this is to play with intention. When I was having a really hard time playing the game, I was about to finish my degree with university, and I was having a really hard time finding time to play. And every single time I had like 2 to 3 hours, I would just play as much as I could, and it would end really negatively. It would either be me ending in a loss, or maybe potentially I didn't win as many games as I wanted to, right? It's still a very frustrating experience. It happens to everybody. And what I found out, and this is just mostly for me, I found out that you should play your first game the best that you can. Quite literally, try to be the positive person, try to be everything that you can be, to be social, do everything that you can to make every single call, be the mediator in your team, have a good time, be positive between you and the enemy team, hit every shot that you can. Quite literally, play the best game of your life, or at least try to. What's going to happen is your mental state is going to be, I am drained, or I'm ready to keep going, right? The goal is to essentially build stamina around this playstyle and around this mindset. If you're able to play that game really, really, really well, and you just play that one game, you're able to kind of figure out what exactly works and what doesn't. Because if you're basically an open-minded person when you're playing the game, and that's in that scenario, then when you take basically the feedback in, I won, I lost, I did this poorly, you're able to use this to carry it on to different days or maybe different games. And what happens is this: whether you end well or not, you need to kind of assess this. If you won, I tell the players, do you feel good? Do you feel like you can play another one at that same level? And they can say, no, that was super draining. I hated mediating for that team, or I had this toxic person. Or they can say, yeah, I felt amazing. Based on that answer, you basically know whether you should go again or not, right? And that's why I said, have different games in your rotation. If the answer is no, you have something else to do. Or maybe you have something else that you do. You could go work out or something like that. And you can come back and restart that game session later during the day, right? But if not, then, right? But if you are good to go, then you can just play again and do that same thing again until you are tired. Okay, mentally tired. You're not ready to mediate. You're not ready to have a good experience with your team. You're not ready to help them out. You're not ready to talk. You're not ready to take those shots. You're not ready to take those fights. Once you hit that limit, you know how far your stamina bar lasts. So for me, while doing this, I realized that my limit was 3 games. Okay, I could do this for 3 games, and then everything after that kind of went off. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of science. At FITGMR, we did some research. We did a little bit of study, and we realized that the normal player can only take up to 3 hours. Okay, it is only up to 3 hours. So if you want to do something like that and just play, you can only play up to 3 hours at your best. You may lie to yourself. You might think that you're crushing some people, but you're not. Okay, statistically speaking, you are going to be worse after 3 hours. So what we do with players is we essentially have them play for 2 hours, have them take a break, and then they can play for another 2 hours and just kind of push the mark. But their performance is going to wither away after 3 hours. That is without any hesitation. That's just the data, and I need you guys to know that. Okay, so that's probably why I found myself at my limit at those 3 games. The goal is to build that stamina, however. So if you can't do the first game or the second game, well, now you'll know what you need to work for. Maybe that's a goal that you can use. Okay, but at the end of the day, try to end in a positive. Okay, even if you did manage to play the game to the best of your ability and you ended with a loss, end it there. You don't have to keep going, right? You already ended in a loss. You'll bring it again. You're not trying to catch up from the last game, right? You're just starting again. And you can do it until maybe you reach a loss. Maybe you'll play 2 games and you'll win them, and then you'll play the last game and you lose. Great. You can stop right there. You lost your game. You end up with a positive of, 25, 22, 19 RR, right? That's already a plus. This guide is for those that are having a hard time climbing a lot or very consistently. So if you're hitting that wall, this is going to slowly get you to your goal. But at the end of the day, it's going to get you to your goal. Okay, slow and steady. You have about 30 plus days essentially when you realize that you really want to keep playing. Because most of the time, the act lasts like, how long does the act last? Does anyone know? 50? I forget. They changed it just a moment ago for me. I think it's 50 days. So you get about 50 something days to kind of figure out what it is that you want to do with the act. And that's why you get plenty of time to climb. And I can tell you right now, it's plenty of time. I was able to go from the reset, which was diamond, all the way to like immortal 2, I believe, using this method within 1 act. Okay, so it's possible, it's doable. So I encourage you guys to try that for yourselves. So with that out of the way, here is the last tip. And this is the one that is not as encouraging, okay? Just because people are basically already having a really hard time climbing. Sometimes you have to take that loss, and sometimes you just have to lose, okay? So when you're looking at those losses, if you just want to play the game and you have nothing else to do, nothing else seems great, everything else seems boring, and you want to play the game, and you are losing, take that chunk of time and actually learn from it, okay? Like I mentioned that here already, sometimes you just have to use your losses as a learning experience. It is not amazing, but you have to look at them in a positive way, okay? Try different things. Try to get yourself out of that state of boredom or that state of a rut. Try different characters, learn different things. So for example, when I was having a really hard time, this is near the beginning of the state of Valorant, I picked up Breach. And this is how I learned Breach. This is how I learned KJ. This is how I learned Cypher, different setups, right? What I did was, I'm not feeling like amazing. I don't want to play Jet. I don't want to play Raze. I don't want to play Phoenix. I don't want to play Duelist. Let's try something else. This is where I learned how to use different smokes, because I only knew how to use Omen when I was first learning, right? So this is how I learned Brimstone. This is how I learned Viper, right? So learn different things, learn different gun combinations. You don't have to use the classic or the ghost at the beginning. You can try the frenzy. You can try the deagle, even if it feels like you're inting a little bit with it, right? You have to try something new. And this is kind of where you can use your losses as a learning experience. I am having a terrible time playing this game, but at least I know the frenzy is never for me, right? Or you can realize, hey, I can run and gun with the frenzy. I didn't know that, and I can do that for next time. Before they nerfed the frenzy to 450 or 500 credits, I used to use it alongside half shield before that was nerfed, of course. So I pretty much just used that combination, and that's how I found out about it. Later do I know that a couple months later, people were using it in pro play, right? You can find things that you might see later in the future just because you were experimenting. So I encourage you guys to kind of figure it out and kind of just play along with the game and try to have fun. With that in mind, okay, we're pretty much done with the class. That's pretty much it. Like I said, today was a short day. Does anyone have any questions? Anything that they want me to answer about their mindset? Anything they want to answer answers about in terms of how their game is, or maybe in terms of I can't do this, or what about this thing that you talked about? So any questions in regards to that? Now is a good time. And if no one has any questions, then I'll close the class.
My same problem about you said about not being able to rank up as easily.
Mm-hmm.
I have that same problem. Like I have gone from silver 3 almost 70 all the way down to silver 1 now.
And it
And
happens.
yeah, and I've finally just started getting some wins now. I'm now back to almost silver 2 50 R.
Yeah, no, it's
But
definitely sometimes not a fast process. If you don't level up your gameplay, let's say mechanically, like a couple ranges away from your current rank, you're gonna have a slow ranking up experience, and you just have to be okay with that. It's a slow process.
yep.
It's a journey, but as long as you're patient, you should be okay. Honestly, and good on you for sharing that experience. Okay. Doesn't seem like we have any other questions.
I got a
Yeah,
question.
go for it.
Like, do you have like any like personal tips for like not tilting? Cause like I went from Diamond 1 to Gold 3, and like a jump like that is like really hurting my mental.
Okay, so I mean, I'll ask you this question because from personal experience, everybody, I think everybody has big losses. Okay, like I could maybe show this. This isn't mine, but like, this can happen to anyone. The red carpet, right? Did you lose because you were tilting, or did you lose because you just couldn't get a win? Those are two different things, by the way. Some people just kind of queue until they win, and some people just try to win and they can't do it no matter what. So which one is it out of the two? Because you need to identify why you lost.
Well, I'll just like lose, and then like I just keep queuing because like I want to leave it on a win.
Okay, well,
Then like I just keep losing.
so there was your first problem, right? So there's a couple times where players that do get to a certain rank that they did it because again they were playing very slowly. Maybe they were just climbing there. They earned that rank, of course, but during that period there is what I want to call like the wall. Okay, every player will reach a wall. The problem is the MMR system might not consider that wall the same one as you. So what happens is, let's say you are playing Diamond, you get to Ascendant, right? Your MMR might now be closer to Ascendant, but as you're losing, your MMR and the rank that's shown on your page are completely different. Okay, so you're still going to get the same games at that new MMR that you gained, but you're not at that level as you were before. I find this with players that get from like Diamond 3 to Ascendant 1, and then they go back down to Diamond 3 because they couldn't keep up with whatever was going on in that new rank. Happens to everybody, right? My advice for you is switch it up. I think, are you playing the same roles potentially? Because that's that's the second thing I'm going to ask. Are you playing the same
I
game?
play like Initiator and Duelist.
Initiator and Duelist? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where you kind of start troubleshooting. Okay. If you're losing like that many games and let's say you're still tilting, then it's time to kind of take a break. I tell players to take like a day or two break, play something else in the meantime, but keep themselves consistent. Maybe show up, play like a death match or two, see how they're feeling. Because I find that they're just still harboring feelings from that loss streak. It's tough. I've taught some collegiates, and one of them was close to reaching Radiant, right? And he just couldn't make it, and it carried over him, and I think it affected him for like 2 weeks. Like it was that bad. It was ridiculous. And it was so hard to get him into the game because he just was like, I could have been Radiant. That would have been a Radiant play, right? Like he just kept saying it, and it kept affecting him. And this is what I mean by this one right here. Have a routine, okay? Start a clean slate. Don't think about that loss streak. You are now the new rank that you're at, okay? So what I encourage players to do is, if you're at the new rank that you're at and you can't win, start VOD reviewing yourself. Start looking at a VOD. Maybe do what Exer did. You saw his little improvement server, right? You can take notes on what you do. For you personally, take a break, come back, start again, and try this.
Yo,
Okay,
yo, I got a question.
go for it.
Yeah, so the question is, because I see aim lab on here. Is it possible you can use like aim labs and stuff like that? But like you were saying, like, do yourself a routine, but like, even though you do it consistently, you still use aim labs. Like, does that kind of affect you in your gameplay? Cause I really use aim labs sometimes. So I want to know if I should transfer like to Kovacs. I think I'm saying that correctly.
Mm,
Kovacs and just that, yeah,
I believe what I'm interpreting is, should you continue to do a playlist if you're not getting any results? Is that what you're getting at?
yeah,
So I'm gonna tell you right now, improvement isn't linear, okay? And this is what I kind of
okay,
meant when I was talking about Furious's question. You will hit a wall, okay? You
yes,
should still do the same thing over and over again. You can kind of change it up. That's kind of why I encourage him taking a break and playing with something else until he can kind of come back. It doesn't have to be that long. It could be the same for you. You might just be stuck in a rut. You're more than welcome to kind of change it up a little bit here and there. You're more than welcome to add like
yeah,
supplementary or aim lab exercises, but keeping a
yeah,
consistent
and
routine
uh,
is going to
uh,
give you the most results. Okay. Because at the end of the day, you're doing something that's going to give you the effect. Sometimes you might outgrow it. So maybe the playlist that you're doing, you're already really good at it, or the skills that you're learning from the aim labs routine isn't worth it, or like Kovacs or whichever one you mentioned is no longer effective anymore. Okay, so if you're at that level, then maybe you need to look for a new one that fits the current trouble that you're at. Okay, and that's the same thing I'm going to tell you as well, Furious. Like again, you can try it up a little bit with switching it up. I was going to encourage maybe try a different agent and kind of see how you feel where you're at right now. But personally, if you are one division below, you should be fine mechanically. I'm not quite sure why you're losing your games, and if it's just purely mental and you're just tilting, you should just be looking at changing it up like this. Okay, you're more than welcome to ask more questions after today, by the way, just so it doesn't have to be all today. And for your question, I don't really know what your name is. It doesn't because I have streamer mode. But for the second person that asked that question, I would say continue doing it unless you already know that you're already getting the results from it, you can try something new. You have to make that
Got
judgment
you.
call. But generally, I just tell
Uh,
players to keep it the same way. If you have like a really
got
good
you.
playlist, you shouldn't have to change it, right? And if you're looking for one that you think you can keep consistent, look up Improve Demon 1 on Aim Labs. Look it up in the workshop. It's by Mini God. Try it by him. That's a really good playlist. I really like it. I think it's really comprehensive with what you need in Valorant. Okay. So both of you, did I answer your questions, or do you have any more questions that you guys want to ask? Or maybe even more
Yes, I have
further
a
explanation?
question, right?
Go for it.
So, like you were saying with like the playlist of Demon Ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So cause what I use is a different playlist, meaning that like for Valorant, like with aiming, that like that type of stuff.
Right.
So yeah, cause I was using like I don't know, like the one like tracking. I was doing the ones for tracking and stuff like that. But now, like that that's like the best one now
Okay, let me see. If
for Demon Ones or something like that.
Oh, I see. Okay, so basically what I'm getting at,
Cause
you're
I
just
was using a
doing
whole number playlist. Yeah,
Oh, you were doing a bunch of different playlists? You might just be getting tired. Quite
yeah,
literally, you might just be getting
it was,
tired.
yeah.
Imagine if you're
So
doing
just
like instead of a 20-minute cardio session to warm up before a workout, you do like a 50-minute cardio session. You're already tired by the
God,
time you're working out. So maybe slow it down.
yeah,
Maybe try one that's more comprehensive instead of doing a bunch of different ones. Or if you're going to be doing like your entire process of like 4 to 5 different
yeah.
playlists, you don't play Valorant that day. Because again, you're basically doing a
Gotcha.
workout and then you're playing like a big game right after. That makes no sense. We always tell players, don't tire yourself out before like a big game. You're going to hurt yourself and your
Yeah,
team. Okay, so that's something that even carries into pros. So don't feel bad about that question. That question even affects pro players. Okay, like they'll be told, don't do like a big workout or don't change anything prior to a game. You're going to ruin the game for yourself and the other players. Um, any other questions? Last question, I'd say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Uh,
Oh, you go first,
okay.
bro.
Oh no, my fault, my fault. I was
Alright, alright. My run rate on Icebox is like 35%, and like my other maps is like 50 and 60. So like, do you have like any tips on like how to improve on the map?
Wait. Which one?
On Icebox, my
Yep.
win rate's like 35.
On
Like, do you have any like
Icebox.
tips on like improving on that?
Do you know Sova or Viper?
Usually I play Sova.
Okay. You already mastered Sova, I would assume.
Yeah, I know like the job and stuff.
Okay. So it's kind of weird. I think I would consider myself a pretty healthy player on Icebox. I have a pretty good win rate on it. And from what I've seen, are you a fast player? Are you like a fast hit player? So would you
I
say
just
that
like play around my team.
you're playing
Like
around your team?
they like set the pace and stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm just like darting and droning and then playing with them.
Okay. So I'm just gonna give you like a general sense of tips that I've seen players do. Okay. So you have 3 potential avenues that you could use. Number 1, Soba is kind of an essential pick on Icebox. And if you don't have a good Sova, you're gonna get practically squished. Okay. There's nothing you can do about that one. However, you mentioned you're playing in Diamond, right? So what I tell players to do is in games where you know that you're already better than them, right? And you should be able to win regardless. You need to look for ways of making it easier for your team to kind of win rounds when they're lower than you. So let's say, for example, you're in silver, but you're stuck in bronze. What do? Well, you make it easier for them to kind of get that chunk out of the way. So right now, let's say you're ascendant level, right? And you're currently stuck in diamond. I would say what makes it easier for them. For now, in that elo right now, I would say it's picks. Okay, so you have 2 ways of doing it. Number 1, you can just kind of go hard on duelist. If you go jet, you need to kind of focus on the op or focus on getting the first blood. Okay, it's really easy to do on belt, and it's really easy to do it against headshot or anyone in rafters. And the second way is to kind of do it with duelist. This is the duelist route. You can go raise and play that same support, but you need to play with your Sova if you're not going to be playing Sova. The second one is play a lurker role. Icebox is an incredibly slow game, so you're going to have to change your playstyle a little bit around that one. Everybody's going to be pushing, for example. You can play slow on one end. Okay, again, very general. You just have to make sure that your team is making noise before you kind of go for the lurk and you kind of start getting picks. The more flanks and picks that you get, the more likely you are to start to see some progress with your team. Because at the end of the day, you're kind of setting them up for success, but they're not taking that advantage, right? This is what I'm hearing from you. Because you're playing Sova, you're playing around your team, you're probably giving them good darts, but they're getting nothing from it. So I encourage you, change your playstyle. Either look for picks by being lurky or look for picks by being engaging. Yeah, by being a little bit more engaging. So use those two different things right there. And the last, of course, but not least, with the Sova pick, either learn different lineups or kind of just workbench a little bit more on the types of info darts that you can have. Because at the end of the day, you really don't have a lot that you can do around that. Besides just getting those picks. And I did mention 3. So it was getting picks, right? With either duelist or lurks. Number 2, you can kind of improve your Sova and just kind of hope that everything works out. And number 3, pick up Viper. Pick up Viper on defense, that's your half. So whatever happens on the on attack, who cares? You can lurk if you like, you can hold mid if you like, but on defense, that's your half. Hold your site. Okay? So make sure that you have one half a lockdown, and you can basically do it by either pick an attack on defense based on duelist or the Viper pick. Okay, those are the 2 things I got for you. Hopefully, the 3 things I got for you. Hopefully you can use them. Again, they're pretty general. I don't know what's happening in your games, and it's been a while since I touched Diamond, so I'm not really sure what's happening on that area. But aside from what I've seen, it's mostly pick related. Okay, so from the people that have VOD review, it's mostly pick related. So I would suggest that you kind of look into that. It's generally pick related in most elos, but in your scenario, it's more so than anything because people are too afraid to engage. Okay, so hopefully that works for you as well. Any questions? I'm actually gonna close the recording here, and I'm just gonna answer any more questions past the recording.